Overall, the third quarter finances report demonstrates that amid ongoing challenges, Ontario's economy remains resilient, with real gross domestic product estimated to have increased by 3.7% in 2022. Today's report shows a projected deficit of $6.5 billion in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, and it is now an improvement of $6.4 billion compared to the fall economic statement, which I tabled on November 14th. This change is due to an increase in revenues in 2022-2023, which are now forecasted to be $9.6 billion higher than forecast in the 2022 fall economic statement. Overall program expense in 22-23 is projected to be $188.6 billion, $3.4 billion higher than forecast. Today's update comes as Ontario and the rest of the world face the continued impacts of economic and geopolitical uncertainty. Higher inflation, interest rates, and geopolitical tensions and ongoing supply chain disruptions continue to create economic challenges. Now, we know these are challenging economic times for many. And as we navigate the economic uncertainty, one thing I have absolute confidence in is the resilience of Ontario's workers, businesses, families, and people. Ontario has proven time and time again that together we can overcome any obstacle that is in our way. And our government has a responsible plan. Our plan to build Ontario is supporting families, workers, and businesses while laying a strong fiscal foundation for the future. L'Ontario a prouvé à maintes reprises qu'ensemble, nous pouvons surmonter tous les obstacles qui se présentent à nous. Et notre gouvernement a un plan responsable. Notre plan pour bâtir l'Ontario en aidant les familles, les travailleurs et les entreprises, tout en jetant des bases financières solides pour l'avenir. Because that is what the people of Ontario expect and deserve from their government. We are continuing to take a targeted approach. After unprecedented investments in response to the pandemic, now is the time for governments to show restraint, to act cautiously and responsibly. I've had the privilege of traveling right across this province the last few weeks and witnessed the remarkable strength and resolve of the people of Ontario. Our government made a promise to be responsible and transparent with the province's economic and fiscal realities. And we will be delivering the next economic and fiscal update as a part of the 2023 budget on or before March 31st. Notre gouvernement a promis d'être responsable et transparent pour ce qui est des réalités économiques et financières de la province. Nous ferons la prochaine mise au point économique et financière dans le cadre du budget de 2023, le 31 mars ou avant. Thank you, and I would be happy to take any questions now.
Can you talk about, you said that they are higher revenues by $9.6 billion. Can you explain what that's?
Sure. The major components of the $9.6 billion of higher revenues come from primarily two areas. One is the corporate income tax and the income tax assessments from 2021 and before. And those assessments come from the federal government. So we are a taker of that information because they process the assessments, the tax assessments. The other area is in the sales tax area, and they've gone up based on data that we've received, updated data from the federal government as of December 2022. So in both those areas, that's the majority of the increase of revenues that we've seen.
You also mentioned the pressures of inflation and the recession, the possible recession. Is Ontario resilient enough to get past that?
Yes. Okay. Ontario is absolutely resilient to be able to get past whatever the economy throws our way. There's no question we're living in uncertain times. I was thinking, back in the early 80s, the target interest rate for the Federal Reserve Bank of the U.S. was 18.5%. So we haven't seen inflation rates like that we're seeing now since the 80s. we haven't seen geopolitical risks, notwithstanding the economic uncertainties for decades, like the Russia-Ukraine invasion. Chinese balloons or whatever types of balloons that are flying over, we haven't seen those. So we live in very uncertain economic times. One I'm very certain about is that, first of all, we have a plan to build Ontario. We went to the people with that plan in April, as I tabled that budget in April of 2022, and it was passed by the people of Ontario on June 2nd of last year. And our updates, including my fall economic statement and the budget that I'll be presenting on or before March 31st, will give a sense of how resilient we are, how focused we are on the economy, on building infrastructure, supporting labor, and while at the same time providing fiscal responsibility and prudence given those uncertainties.
The FAO projected a $2.5 billion deficit for this year. It's still quite a bit lower than what you're talking about. Why the discrepancy?
Well, there's a couple of things. First off, our expenses are $3.4 billion higher. And along with our revenue increases that I just talked about, our deficit has actually come down by $6.4 billion than we had put in the fall economic statement in November. And again, the FAO, they look at point in time. They don't have full information. What they did say is that they have some certainty about the economic environment we're in. They don't think that we'll have a recession. I'd love to have the FAO's crystal ball. But my job, I wouldn't be a responsible finance minister if I didn't plan for all types of scenarios, economically and otherwise, to make sure that Ontario can go through any challenge that may be in front of us.
Are you expecting there'll be a recession then? Is it more likely that there'll be a recession than not, in your opinion?
I don't know. I've traveled recently in the U.S. to talk to investors. I've gone to Europe, in Paris and Frankfurt and London to talk to our major investors who are investing in Ontario. And there's a lot of uncertainty. They're facing uncertainty in Europe with the Russia-Ukraine invasion. We're seeing economic uncertainty right around the globe, the higher interest rates. So, I think that it's fair to say that there is a lot of economic uncertainty, and these interest rates, will have an impact. Are having an impact on people, are having an impact on businesses, are having an impact on even government. So what's important in that is not to predict what may happen, but to be prepared for what may happen. And I feel pretty confident that Ontario is prepared through our plan to build and our updating of our finances and today, and of course my update in the 2023 budget, which is going to be coming soon.
Speaking of which, you've mentioned it might be on or before March 31st. Can you firm up that date anymore? Are you expecting it to be March 31st?
Well, you won't be shocked for that. I won't give you specifics on the date. But let me just come back to the fact that I think it's so critical. I'm up here every 90 days to give you the updates on the quarterly results. I think it's important to update people along with the budget, which I do once a year, the quarterly results, which I do every 90 days, the fall economic statement, which is in between budgets, the public accounts, which is the year-end books. I think it's important that we continue to tell the Ontarians how we're spending your money, their money, and how we're making progress on our plan to build. So that not only includes attracting capital, that we're seeing investments into the economy like we haven't seen for some time, but it also includes building the infrastructure, because we're expecting and continue to have a lot of people coming to this great province. The federal government has increased the targets for immigration to 500,000 people starting in 2025. The majority come to Ontario. The Roxham Road border, there was over 41,000 people that came through the Quebec border last year. The majority of them come to Ontario. So it's incumbent on our government to make sure that we continue building the infrastructure necessary to build housing, to build roads, to build subways, to build hospitals, and so on, as we accept a growing population. And I'll say one more thing, that this Q3 statement, the population that we're put in there is over 15 million for Ontario, and the economy crossed over the $1 trillion mark. So these are significant, I think, benchmarks for progress in Ontario.
Will there be a cutting back on the use of like contingency funds in the new budget going forward? The FAO highlighted this as being against budgetary transparency. Are you going to take that criticism to heart and stop putting so much money in allocated funds?
No, I fundamentally disagree with the FAO on this point. Again, it comes back to crystal balls. If you had a perfect crystal ball, you'd know how you'd spend every single penny, whether it be health care or education or social services or, do you know what's around the corner from a healthcare point of view, a pandemic? I wouldn't be doing my job as Minister of Finance if I didn't build in some prudence and contingency funds in years 2 and 3. And that's what he's really talking about. I would challenge anyone to know with certainty, without setting aside some funds, to make sure that you can absorb those challenges. And of course, as the public account shows, and the FAO would know very clearly, that every year we stand up here with the public accounts and show the people of Ontario how we spent those funds that we consider are prudent for future uncertainties.
Time for one more.
Can
you
go ahead.
Can you give us any hints as to what's coming up in the budget, what Ontarians can expect?
Well, I think what Ontarians can expect is more of the same. In other words, that we have a plan to build Ontario. It's going to be a plan that updates how we're doing on those priorities. The government's priorities to attract investment and good jobs and bigger paychecks in the province, how we're advancing on our plan to build that infrastructure that I talked about. It's going to talk about the workers, labor. Labor is our biggest challenge going forward. The good news, I think, is that Ontario is well placed to attract people from around the world. We're a beacon of freedom and democracy here in Ontario, in Canada. That's the good news. But we have to make sure that we've got the right type of labor, that we retrain, we reskill, we retain, be it healthcare workers, education workers, skilled trades. So we'll continue to update Ontarians on the progress that we're making on that plan for Ontario. And the other thing that I would say is that we have to, as the Minister of Finance and as any Minister of Finance would do, given these uncertain economic times, is to make sure that we're fiscally prudent, that we're fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. We went into this before the COVID pandemic as the largest indebted subnational sovereign in the world. We spared no expense through COVID, some $37 billion of additional funding to combat COVID. I have a responsibility to the taxpayers and the people of Ontario to continue, and I want to be really clear about this, to continue to be fiscally responsible and prudent while investing in the core things that Ontarians expect us to do with regard to the economy and with regard to jobs and workers and our healthcare system, among other things.
Just one more question. During the pre-budget consultations, we heard over and over again from different community health organizations that their base funding hasn't gone up in many years, and that this is becoming a problem when it comes to having giving wage increases that are necessary so that they can retain staff. And we've heard just about from every single Canadian Mental Health Association branch in the province, a bunch of community clinics, all saying that their base funding hasn't gone up in several years and they're at a breaking point. Can we expect some base funding for institutions like that across the province to go up in the new budget?
Well, you won't be surprised that I'm not going to disclose what we may or may not do in the budget, but I'll tell you this. We've gotten literally hundreds, if not thousands, of submissions, including those from mental health and addiction, both community, as you just said, community organizations, from healthcare organizations, from a range of practitioners in the mental health and addiction space. And I can tell you that not only does our government take that very seriously, and we've increased the investment in mental health and addiction investment every year that I've been in government, and will continue to do that. But we take those things very seriously. We've gone through a very tough period over the last couple of years in COVID, as you're highlighting. I think our community healthcare workers are top notch, and we listen very carefully, and we work very closely with them. And of course, we'll have more to say when I do table that budget.
Thank you.
I appreciate that question. All right, thank you, and thank you for coming out today.